Please welcome Daphne Lundi and Emma Osore to the stage.
That was a surprise. Hi, everyone. We are thrilled to be here. Thank you for attending our Smart Talk. We're very happy to have been invited to talk to you all about the things that keep us up at night. I'm Emma, and this is Daphne. We're members of BlackSpace, which is a 25-person collective of artists, urban planners, architects, economic development professionals, and real estate development professionals. We came together about 2 years ago after a bunch of us found each other at Harvard's Black in Design conference. We all realized we lived in Brooklyn and decided we needed to...
That's where we live.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a thing.
We realized that we wanted to continue some of the electrifying conversations that we had across lots of design disciplines that we weren't necessarily getting in our day-to-day work. And these professionals that we met were not only excellent in their fields, they were also centering social justice and people. So as Black urbanists and residents of Black enclaves in Brooklyn, one thing that returned over and over in our monthly conversations was that often we were the only Black or brown faces at the table about policy decisions that affected predominantly Black and marginalized communities. We were very hungry to have these conversations, and we met often over brunch. When I say hungry, I mean it. And we asked ourselves over those brunches to imagine the world after BlackSpace had achieved its goals in the world. And this is what we envisioned. A present and future where Black people, Black spaces, and Black culture matter and thrive. People and spaces, obvious, yes, but why Black culture? Well, the formation of Black neighborhoods are closely linked to the history of segregation in the United States. And Black people, together in neighborhoods, have played an important role in the development of nearly all aspects of both Black culture and broader American culture. Black and American culture that is born in Black enclaves is directly linked to the displacement that we're seeing today, which operates on two verticals as we see it. One is economic, the other is cultural. According to the US Census, upwards of 36% of Black households have been displaced in some central Brooklyn neighborhoods between 2000 and 2010. And as urbanists, we respect the city's ability to morph and change over time, but the loss of Black cultural assets for us is unacceptable. Our solution is two-pronged: to both nurture and support Black people in fields of influence that shape our social and spatial environments, and also to promote and protect Black communities through collaborations that protect Black assets. So we found this poignant quote from Jackie Johnson of the National Trust that distills our collective call to action as people who are interested in heritage conservation and what that looks like going forward. Social justice is key to ensuring that preservation centers people. It invites the preservation movement to critically analyze its role in ensuring that the basic needs of communities with deeply divided histories are met. It positions the preservationist in a lifelong process of speaking truth to power and advocating for marginalized groups. So BlackSpace explores the ways in which culture and people, not just buildings of historic significance, in traditionally Black enclaves can be acknowledged, affirmed, and amplified in formal planning and conservation practice. This is how we so far have worked to realize the future that we imagine. Last month, BlackSpace collaborated with Black Gotham Experience, an Afro-inclusive historical walking tour of the financial district, Has anyone been on a Black Gotham walking tour? Okay, you should definitely check it out. It highlights the roles of Black people in the foundings of the city that we all call home, New York City. We co-hosted a networking mixer in their creative immersive space, and over 50 people attended that tour. It was quite phenomenal. We just kicked off our participation in a 14-week neighborhood history scavenger hunt in Bed-Stuy, a historically Black enclave where we're introducing young people to design professions while guiding their research on places of historic significance in their rapidly gentrifying neighborhood. In 2017, we've created forums to push the discourse forward around issues that we've presented and will continue to present, including an event called Spaces and Places of Protest, in response to the American Planning Association's lack of representation of Black and marginalized voices at their recent conference. Daphne, who's jumping in here soon, is co-organizing an upcoming conference called Hindsight, which commemorates the 100th anniversary of the invalidation of racialized zoning in the US. And being invited here today, we also hope that we are pushing the discourse forward with like-minded folks like you all.
And so one of the reasons we've had to create a lot of these spaces and forums of discussion is that they don't exist today, right? And today there's this real disconnect between people who are shaping policy and design and people who are impacted by it. So this was data that was compiled by Giovanna Tierchristi. She's a planner in New York City. And one of the main takeaways of her work is that even though New York City is a really diverse region, the people that are doing the planning don't reflect that. And if you made a chart like this for architecture, for design, for historic preservation, you'd still see the same patterns. And that's really a big issue for us because, as urbanists, we are the ones that are shaping the built environment. We're working on different levels of scale that touch buildings, that touch infrastructure. And, historically, a lot of these systems have negatively impacted Black and marginalized communities. And, when we're trying to fight these issues of erasure, if we're not part of the systems that are shaping our landscape, it's hard for us to push that forward. And, fundamentally, our landscapes are complicated. I think as designers and planners, we can talk about the structural issues of a site, why a site is hard or easy to design on, but we often struggle with talking about the history of a site. So understanding the racial and the issues that make the site complicated. And we have to do that as urbanists because we're never starting from square one in a space. There's always a history, there's always a story. And we're doing a disservice when we're in communities if we're not starting from that truth and starting from that fact. And so through our work, we've really been pushing to create new ways that center people in community engagement and planning. So making sure that folks are at the table when it comes to planning processes, be them informal and, or formal. And we think of it through a lot of lenses, but really our focus is making sure that Black places and Black people are centered in these planning processes. And so these are some photos from a planning workshop I did with the Octavia Project. So the Octavia Project is this summer program for teenage girls in central Brooklyn, and it uses the lens of science fiction and fantasy to introduce young people to engineering, design, and architecture. And it was really intentional on the part of the organization to use the author Octavia Butler as the namesake, because a lot of her work centered Black and brown people in the future. And that shouldn't be a radical idea, but it is, because oftentimes our narratives don't exist in a future-facing world. And so through the course of the workshop, these teenage girls created their cities. They used their knowledges, they used their experience with space to shape a future-built environment. And so this is a photo of the Made in Brownsville Space. One of our members, Cordine Lewis Allen, he's born and raised in Brownsville. He was trained as an architect at Harvard, and he created this space which basically serves as a youth-led design firm, but also a community space. So a lot of his work has been about making sure that community members are part of design conversations that shape, their neighborhood, be it a plaza or a programming of a space. So this was at the launch of the event where he held a charrette that was asking people, how would you like to see the space programmed? What kind of services make sense for you as a Brownsville resident? And so these are just some examples of the work that we're doing and the ways that we're trying to approach this issue of cultural erasure through formal planning practices, but also informal conversations. But we really think of this as work, of all urbanists. We have to be more comfortable with talking about the challenges in our landscapes, about the history of our landscapes. We have to get more comfortable about centering people in our design practices and making sure that they're part of the conversations in neighborhoods that impact them. And finally, when we're thinking about historic preservation, it can't be a focused lens of historic preservation. We have to think about communities who today are going through cultural erasure, and we have to make sure that their voices are part of that conversation, and that their stories and places are preserved. And really, that's the work of BlackSpace moving forward. Thank you.